And this is a project that's been done in collaboration with the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine and the Collective for Social Science Research. Okay, we became very interested in this question, of course, because of the well-known relationship between women's work in agriculture and nutrition. And of course, there can be a positive impact of women's work in agriculture, especially commercial agriculture, where she's earning money through increased income, and so an increased ability to purchase foods or to purchase health products. But there can also be a negative impact on women's nutrition and child nutrition, and this is through increased energy expenditure with long agricultural working hours, reduction in care practices for both the mother and the child, and this can have a negative impact on maternal and child nutrition. And the evidence on these effects are somewhat mixed, and so we were very interested to look at this in the context of rural Pakistan. Now, there's been a feminization of agriculture in rural Pakistan, and of the working force, 75% are employed in agriculture, and which has been increasing over time. Harvesting of cotton is a very common sort of commercial enterprise where women are employed in agriculture, and it's the largest crop in Pakistan, and it's almost exclusively done by women. Crop-related agricultural work, especially cotton picking, involves intensive long hours of work. It's physically very intensive under the sun, and so it could have an impact on maternal and infant nutrition and health. So we were very interested in looking at this in more depth. So the objective of our study was to investigate whether women's work in agriculture, especially crop-related agriculture during pregnancy, had an association with maternal body mass index, and this is actually postpartum. To investigate whether women's workload in crop-related agriculture during pregnancy was associated with attained infant growth in early infancy, and to assess whether women's nutritional status mediated any association between crop-related agricultural activities and infant growth. So the study itself was done in Sindh province, and we sampled a total of 1,161 mother-infant dyads, and they were recruited from rural canal areas. And the reason we did the rural canal irrigated areas because this is where cotton picking is more common. The infants were they were between 2 and 12 weeks of age. So keep in mind these are very young infants at recruitment, and they were selected randomly using a cluster by village sampling procedure. It was a longitudinal observational study. The first survey was done in January, February of last year, and the second was completed in November and December of last year. Today, we're only focusing on the results from the first survey. In terms of data collection, we collected an interviewer administrative questionnaire looking at workload, looking at health status, sociodemographics, characteristics, dietary intakes, etc. And we also did anthropometric measurements, height and weight of the mothers, and weight and length of the infants. The analysis was done using linear regression analysis to look at the relationships between crop-related workload cotton picking during pregnancy and maternal body mass index, postpartum, and infant growth. And with the mediation analysis, we used structural equation modeling. So this slide just gives you some of the general demographic characteristics of the population. As you see, the infants were very young at 1.6 months of age. Mothers were about 27 years of age, and there's half male and female. There's very low level of education among the mothers. Only 19% had any formal education. 3 was the average median parity level. And you see that 43% were involved in crop-related agriculture in pregnancy, and about a third, or 28%, were involved in cotton picking during pregnancy. In terms of their anthropometric status, as you see here, the BMI of the mothers was 21.1, which compared to other countries such as India is not as low as what we've seen in rural India, for example. But we still had close to a quarter of the mothers were underweight and 13% were overweight or obese. But what was really remarkable was looking at infant growth. At this very young age, we already had 45% of those infants were stunted, and 12.4% were wasted. So there's obviously something happening during pregnancy that is having an effect on infant growth. So then we began to look at some of these relationships. So the first one we looked at was the relationship between agricultural work during pregnancy and maternal BMI, and we saw a negative relationship with both crop-related activity and cotton picking during pregnancy, and this remains statistically significant after adjusting for education, household wealth quintiles, maternal age, parity, and the number of days postpartum. We also saw a negative relationship between agriculture work during pregnancy and infant length for age Z-scores. And this was negative for both crop-related activity and cotton picking, but once we adjusted for education, household wealth quintiles, age, sex, maternal parity, and maternal height, we saw that relationship only remained statistically significant for cotton picking during pregnancy, although there was a strong trend for crop-related agricultural activity. And as you can see here, it's about a third of a standard deviation lower for those that are involved in cotton picking. So then we looked at the mediation analysis to see if there may be some evidence of an effect of maternal nutritional status was mediating that effect between cotton picking and infant length for age for Z-score. And we did find a significant effect with about 15% of that relationship being mediated of the total effect being mediated by maternal BMI or maternal nutritional status. So in conclusion then, what was remarkable was that very high percentage of infants who were stunted at 2 to 12 weeks of age, suggesting maternal nutrition conditions during pregnancy or environmental conditions could be compromising prenatal infant growth. They were correlated with agricultural workload and cotton picking during pregnancy, and this was associated with a negative effect on both maternal and infant growth, maternal BMI and infant growth. The negative association between cotton picking and infant growth operated to some extent through a reduction in maternal nutritional status, but there was a large effect that wasn't. These results identify the significant trade-offs that are made when families need to generate income to support that these may have a negative impact on infant growth in farming rural communities. So in terms of the policy implications, we do have some evidence which would need to be confirmed in trials, that there may be an argument to reduce the pressure on women to work in agriculture during pregnancy, to improve, or if they do have to work, to improve new terms and conditions of work, compensate for maybe energy, the extra energy required for work in agriculture, and compensate for the care burden to protect the women's time. The target policy areas would be a legal policy framework that would recognize, protect, and promote the rights of women that are working in agriculture, especially during pregnancy, agriculture labor, registration, regulation of wages, and working conditions, so there'd be less pressure on women to work during pregnancy, support services if they are, health and nutrition programs to protect women's time or protect women's nutritional status, and then of course social protection programs targeting women during pregnancy to help ensure optimal nutritional status of infants, during the conceptual period. And so we'd like to acknowledge the funding from the Department of International Development UK, as well as the staff at the Collective for Social Science Research, some of whom are in the audience here, as well as all the participants in the LANSA project. And thank you for listening.